everybody, it is Calxiyn and Hunter here, and today we are going to be talking about how Alyx and Lewis fell through the world, okay? We have a different video about how Lewis was the one that made it home that I would recommend, because these
that was
things
about
are
the exit,
connected.
This is about the entrance.
Like, they're all connected, sort of, but I did want to make, I did want to make two separate videos about it, okay? And so, here is what I have compiled. I have compiled, like, every time they mentioned Alyx, so I want to go piece by piece in order of, like, chronological order, right? So we got, this is the story of a girl who had a lot of problems. That is from the Volume 9 teaser. Ozpin said she brushed off her bumps and bruises, for nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest. So that's him quoting the story. And so him and Oscar have the conversation about it. I thought the idea of falling through Remnant into a new world was exciting. I never understood why she was so sad when she finally made it back home, but now it makes sense. She wasn't the same girl anymore. And this is from the teaser trailer. Before she went back home, the girl had a great many questions to ponder. After all the lessons she learned and the friends she had made and lost, who had she become? Would she still be the same when she went back home? The leaves of the tree rustled, and on the wind she heard one more question: what are you? Ozpin says again, a young girl flees the consequences of a choice to a magical place. But having never learned from her initial failure, she only succeeds in spreading it. And then he says, I failed all of you. And so those are all of the mentions of, like, sounding like it was the beginning-ish, or like a quote directly from the story, because we do have more in Volume 9, but Blake, Weiss, and Yang, they never talk about how Alyx got there. So, these are the only pieces that really talk about how Alyx actually got there,
and
right?
from this, we can make two kind of assumptions. One, you could say she had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And she was trying to escape something. She was trying to escape what was ever in Remnant. We notice is that both her and her brother, Lewis, they don't have color names, meaning that their names or they date from before the Great War.
Yeah.
Meaning that their problems could in fact just be the war. They're trying to escape it. They could be almost, I mean, they look pretty they look pretty well dressed for like hard-scrabbled refugees, but it's a possibility that they're trying to escape like the conflict of war. Maybe they're from Vale, or maybe from Vacuo.
Yeah, exactly. Because they do dress a bit more like Vale, given how Ozpin used to dress. Because here's the thing. We had an idea that the gods kidnapped them. And that could still be true, but the problem is that the story paints it, and like, this is where we get into complicated stuff, because if Lewis wrote the story, right, like, it could be some things that he embellished or he changed, because we think that Lewis is the one that got out, but I feel like that if they were kidnapped by the gods, they would have just said that. Like, you know what I mean? Instead of a girl flees from the consequences of a choice to a magical place. That makes it sound like a choice in of itself to flee. So the question is how they got there. And so we had a couple theories about this. There was the first one, and this is something we mentioned before, but I will go and talk about our other theory, which is Semblance related. But we had a theory that Ozpin used the creation relic before to make something that looked a lot like this in order to evacuate people during the war, and they fell. Or they chose to jump because the war was just so bad. Like, it happens, right? And so they just decided to, like, you know what I mean? They just decided to jump off the side, because we do see, like, the Punderstorm kind of reminds me of Ambrosius's situation. And so we had a theory. There's also a different crossroads in the trailer that, like, Blake, Yang, and Weiss are all in, and it looks a little different than the Punderstorm that Jaune, Weiss, and RWBY were in. And so we're thinking that, like, there could be a second Punderstorm, but what if that was a hint at the fact that, like, someone made the crossroads before, and similarly, there were no guardrails, and so people just fucking fell down, right? Like, you know, it happens, I guess, right? If Ozpin was trying to basically, Ozpin did it before.
To make
you know what I'm saying? Ozpin did it before, and that's how they got there. That's one idea. Is that they just, like, they were traveling and they decided, you know what, fuck this, we're all gonna die anyway, so they
Alternatively,
just jumped.
And this kind of goes into the notion of chess, and this has to do with an older theory we had as well, is that perhaps she was an older summer maiden, because we don't quite know who the summer maiden is, where they are. We
had an idea that, like, Ozpin shoved her into the vault so she could hide from Salem.
There was the idea that, like, she could have become the summer maiden. There's a great deal of trepidation about receiving the powers. Perhaps it was too much for her. Perhaps she tried to escape. that goes with our theory that the places, the sort of weird liminal spaces in which the relics are stored, are indeed in the ever after.
Yeah.
So possibly she could open the door, close the door on herself, and run away when she realized the exact nature of what it was she was doing, that she was being hunted down and murdered for the rest of time.
That's a theory I still really like. However...
And alternatively, that doesn't explain how Lewis gets involved in this.
I could, right? Because what if they're playing around? Like, you know, they could just be like an Elsa Anna situation, playing with her powers, right? Or something.
We think
and like they go into the vaults together, or he runs after her.
Yes.
Like, but the question would be why they couldn't go home just immediately. And so that there's two branching paths. I prefer the idea that she was a maiden and she opened the relic door and decided, I think I won't, actually, and just went in there, and her brother went with her, and the entire time, they were arguing, and they were like, I just want to go home. Why can't we go back home? And she's like, well, you know, back home there are problems. There are no problems here. This is great. And she was just having a great time.
We're going to be hunted down and murdered by my boss's ex-wife. It's going to be miserable.
Ascension theory is just bullshit, like generalized bullshit. Like it's just generally all bullshit. And that she could always go home. Maybe the door is just by the tree. Because here's the sussy thing that the cat actually says. The cat says she told me she'd take me with her through the door to Remnant, but she tricked me, just like all of you, which is suspicious, right? When you consider the fact that, like, we never heard of a fucking door, right? Like, you know, nobody ever mentioned there being a door. And so what if, like, this theory hinges on the idea that ascending to the tree to get back to Remnant is just wrong. That there is a door, and the door is the vacuo vault, right? And that Alyx could always go home. Eventually, she decided, if you watch our Lewis theory, that it was time to bring her brother home, basically, because her brother was miserable. And so she opens the door, she pretends she's gonna go with him, right?
And
she
kicks
sends him home.
and slams the door.
And slams the door shut. And the reason why she didn't let the cat out, she was never going in the first place. That's why she tricked the cat, was because she was never actually planning on going through the door herself.
She could not want to be found in the ever after.
Exactly.
Because a kind of general premise, I have not read Alice in Wonderland in a very long time, but my general idea is it's the notion of a young girl who doesn't want to be prim and proper
and not part of
her
society.
Responsibilities.
Yeah.
So she has this wild adventure in her dreams. Maybe there's kind of a darker twist on that, in that Alyx doesn't want to basically be a child soldier for Ozpin like everyone else, and so she tries to run away from that, and the ever after is where she goes to hide.
Yes.
Maybe she believes she trusts her brother not to tell Ozpin, but perhaps she doesn't trust the cat.
But even if she told him, what could they do about it, right? Because only the maidens can open the vault. It's not like Ozpin could be like, knock, 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 get out of there, Alyx, right? Like, we've theorized that, like, if the maidens can open the vaults, why can't Ozpin use his magic? Because the magic came from Ozpin. Like, you know, there's a convolution around it. But, like, even, like, nobody could tell, like, Ozpin, and Ozpin couldn't do anything about it, right? But, like, maybe he does know, but maybe...
I don't know, Ozpin is the man who has made more mistakes than man, woman, and children alive.
But, like, he couldn't go get her. She would have to open the door for him. But that connects back to this idea. She brushed off her bumps and bruises, for nothing hurt worse than the loneliness in her chest. I wonder if that's after, actually, she sent Lewis home, even though it sounds like he's quoting the story, and it's like, how would Lewis know that? It's supposed to have, like, a double meaning sort of line. The loneliness was in Lewis's chest, when Lewis is the one that went home. He was lonely because he was kicked out and went without his sister, right? And the idea is on the other end, she also hurt after sending her brother back home. And so basically the theory with, like, the whole door and that no one actually ascended is that she decided to stay. Like, she decided to stay there, and she just eventually ascended, because even though the cat says it won't happen to you because you're not ever aftians, we know that the ever after has a loose and hard sense at the same time of identity. And so if you now identify as this being your home, could that mean that you are up on the chopping block for Ascension? So I think that basically what happened, if I'm going to just rehash it again very quickly, is that Alyx is the maiden. She opens the door. She goes inside of the vault. She doesn't want to go home. Lewis wants to go home. She realizes that she's a bad person, and she wants, you know, from the herbalist, she realized she's a bad person. She has to go home. She knows that Jaune will not let her, you know, go home or something.
Or
like, she knows that Jaune is going to, like, railroad her or whatever, but she actually knew how to get home all along because she's the one that opened the door. And so therefore she sends Lewis home and, like, sticks him through the vault, basically. And so then she stays there.
And slams the door on his ass
She
on
gets
the
all
way
sad. Like, it's fine at first, but then she gets older and she realized she made a mistake, but she doesn't want to go back home. And so she decides to ascend. And that's why she flees from the consequences of her choice. And she never learned her initial failure. What if that was running away in the first place? And she never learned because she ran, like, she could have always went home, but she decided not to and she ascended and it's too late. Right? And that could be interesting because, like, we think that the maiden powers are with Star, who is Sun's cousin in the book. But what if Alyx, even as the... Oh, it's so stupid. Even as Juniper still has the maiden powers. That would be a little nutty.
Unless it's like...
Unless technically she died and so they went somewhere else. Like when she ascended, she technically died, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It would be amusing that if by that logic, the second that Juniper remembers that, like, hey, I'm not actually from here, I'm from Remnant, they cease being an Ever-Aftian, which I guess is what we're calling.
And they just turn back.
And they turn back, and then they're
And that's
Alyx
how we
again,
get the Summer Maiden?
which would be crazy.
Could that be, like, why we're spending so much time on this rando that we're probably never gonna meet because she's not gonna be a rando? Like, she's gonna come back and be the Summer Maiden?
That would make a certain amount of sense.
It would, kind of, and then it's really easy for Team RWBY to get home because then they just
and then that kind of, whether or not you want to do the whole Juniper, she ends up being the Juniper Rabbit.
I think she is, but whatever.
But it makes sense because then she would sort of be the foil to RWBY, where RWBY is like, no, we're gonna fight, we're gonna win, we're gonna beat Salem.
RWBY doesn't feel that way anymore.
She doesn't feel that now, but maybe she meets Alyx, who had that defeatist attitude long before her, to the point where she's afraid to leave the Ever After. And maybe that's what makes RWBY realize that, like, maybe that's the kick in the pants she needs to realize, like, no, I can't end up like her. I can't just hide from my problems.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So our first theory is that we had, like, there were war portals and whatever. And then this is the theory that, again, it is still the vaults, and that's why the cat is talking about a door, and Alyx was the maiden. Lewis is the one that went home, and he, like, went back and wrote the story and whatnot. And so basically the way this volume is going to end is that they get to the tree, but it's the door. Like, the tree is not what helps them ascend. The tree being a trade is just kind of bullshit. It has nothing to do with anything, right? It's a red herring. The tree getting them home is a red herring. And, like, the actual way home was through the relic door, and they're already in Vacuo, and that makes everything kind of nice and neat and easy. Also, I'm sorry for having this thought in my head, but some people think, including me, we're gonna make a separate video, that Neo is going to go into Jaune's village and kill Jaune, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if she killed a Juniper, not to be that person, and a Juniper is Alyx, and Alyx is the maiden, could Neo get the maiden powers?
That would be pretty wild.
Like, I feel like Neo is not making it out of this volume. Like, I just sort of, like, in my bones, I kind of have the feeling that they're gonna leave her there. But, like, it would be wild, and it would be, like, my enemy has to be my friend if Neo got the maiden powers. Which is a problem, because, like, there are fairy tale stories where someone has been turned into an animal, and the protagonist who is supposed to help them accidentally or, like, purposefully sometimes kills them, and they turn back into a prince or whatever they were before. So it'd be really fucked up if Neo killed Juniper and Juniper turned back into Alyx.
Yeah.
And Jaune realizes that it was Alyx the whole time. But that's kind of crack. Like, we're going into crack territory. There is, however, one more idea that is not connected with the relics or with magical portals. And that is the idea that this was a semblance, which is similar, but would not include any of the maiden stuff. It would still be up in the air why exactly Alyx would want to leave, but I still think that the war thing could be the reason, right? Like, the world is falling apart, and she kind of makes a wish, in a sense. Like, she wishes that, like, she could go somewhere else. And I don't know what she would describe the place as, but maybe it's, like, a place where the rules didn't apply to me. Maybe it's that simple, like, using the phrase that Jaune says. And it's like Raven, and how Raven can open portals to people that she is connected to, or people that she loves, like people that are special to her. What Alyx could do is make portals to places that she imagines in her head. And so the Ever After is still not in the relic vaults. and it's still not part of Remnant. It still could have been made by the gods, but it's her semblance that brought them there. And maybe she doesn't even realize it. It's kind of something that happens like when you're asleep. She made the way, like, sleep semblancing. You know, some people think that, like, Fox can activate his telepathy in his sleep, like, sort of like that in her sleep, she activates her semblance and takes her and Lewis through. And the reason why they don't know how to get home is either because she doesn't want to tell him, or because she actually doesn't know that she activated her semblance, because this is before the Great War, before there were, like, huntsman schools
which aligns
and
with
stuff like that.
Or with Alice in Wonderland inspiration, because Alice in Wonderland is like the originator of the whole "it was always a dream" thing.
Yeah, and like
that, and I suppose
fleeing the consequences of a choice. Like, maybe she did something bad. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe she did something bad in the real world or something. And, like, she had a lot of problems. So what were her problems back home, right? And so I feel like that maybe there's some sort of connection in that. This idea that, like, she wanted to run away, and so she literally manifested the way out, but she couldn't as easily manifest the way back. And so I guess eventually at the end of the story, what she would do again, for similar reasons but not for maiden reasons, is that she would send Lewis home under the false pretense that the tree can get them home. But she would actually eventually figure out that, like, she was the one who got them home, right? Or could have got them home. And she sent him through, but she decided to stay, and she ascended before. So it's basically the same as the maiden idea, but it's without the relic door. The question would be, though, in that case, how does Team RWBY get back to Remnant? Because if the relic door is still there, that makes sense. However, if it was a function of Alyx's semblance that brought them here, there would be no remaining thing. And so this is where kind of the crack comes in, all right? So when RWBY is talking to the blacksmith, that I'm sure is under the tree, because the whole thing is the tree comes to you and the blacksmith literally came to her, right? Little says, "RWBY, I don't think we're supposed to be here. RWBY is my friend and I want to help her get home, even though I don't know where that is or how to get there." And so I wonder, like, if this is sort of an extension. Like, they find out that the way that Alyx and Lewis got there in the first place was because Alyx had a semblance that allowed her to basically teleport, right? Not that she can teleport like crazy, but like teleport to like a place that she thinks of, or a place that she knows. Because, okay, here's another weird thing, and this is kind of a side tangent, but like, Sun sees the tree in his dreams.
Sun.
Yeah, in the RWBY novels. When he awakens his semblance, he sees the tree. And we have no idea what the fuckity-wuckity that's all about. So does the blacksmith also give people on Remnant their purposes? But anyway, so like, if this is an actual place, could it have been possible that Alyx saw it in a dream, and therefore the logic of the semblance would be that is a place you know, because it's a real place? Because some of you guys may be like, but that's bullshit. How can she go to a place that she doesn't even know about just by thinking about it? But like, if she saw the tree like Sun did in her dreams, could she have just like, that counts, basically.
Yes.
Like, if you saw Weiss's house, a picture of Weiss's manor, you could teleport yourself to Weiss's manor. That's basically kind of what I'm saying. So like, if she had the semblance that allowed her to teleport to something she has seen, whether in real life or not, if she saw a tree in her dreams like Sun did, that would stand to reason that it makes sense. But the question is, again, how does Team RWBY get home? So here's where the crack comes in, okay? Some people think that Little is Alyx. I don't think that that's actually true. I think that Alyx is the rabbit. However, if Little is Alyx, it could be like, oh yeah, I could literally get you home because I am Alyx and I have the semblance. But I don't think that's what it's going to be, okay? Here's the crack. I think Little is going to ascend into a door. And I know that that sounds kind of silly, but like, I think there is precedent because there is a talking door in Alice in Wonderland.
This is true.
So I feel like that Little's purpose, if it is to help RWBY and her friend get home, could literally become a door. Because we see in the OP that there is a door in the R of RWBY, right? And so that could be Little turned into the door.
Maybe another
because that's
example,
not a relic door,
but
that is a door.
It might be another example of us taking the openings a little seriously. We have a long history of doing that, like in Volume 4.
But the cat says there's a door.
That's true.
So now, there is a new introduction of a concept that the tree does not like Star Trek beam you up into Remnant, right? There is a actual door, and how did Alyx know that, right? And so like, unless Alyx was lying and it was her semblance or it was the relic door, like, what if the way that Team RWBY gets home is because Little ascends to be the door between worlds?
Which possibility, I suppose.
And I don't see why that wouldn't work, right? Because there's a talking door in Alice in Wonderland, and that's how she gets into Wonderland, is through a talking door, right? And so it could be possible that the door exists by itself, and because I do think that the tree ascending people and that being the way to get back to Remnant is bullshit. Like, I'm pretty convinced that that's not true. And so we have to decide, is there a door? And there's been a door the entire time, despite the fact that Remnant people are not supposed to be here. Or is the door the relic door? Or is the door just Alyx's semblance? And if Alyx's semblance is the answer, Team RWBY has to find a way home, which means there needs to be someone whose purpose is to connect Remnant to the ever after. And could Little ascend to fulfill that role? Because I don't see why Little couldn't become that, because, like, right now there would be no character that serves to be the bridge through the ever after and Remnant. But what if it's possible that Little is the manifestation of what happens, I guess, when people from Remnant and the ever after actually come together and work together? It's a metaphor where Alyx went around and destroyed the world.
Volume has really turned our brain into
where
mush.
Alyx went around and kind of destroyed the world, according to the story. Little and RWBY, they unify, like, together against common, enemies, right? No. Like, they just come together in a metaphorical way. So Little turns into the door that gets them home. That's the last theory that we have.
That's how Little dies. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we also never talk about, like, Summer and Summer's potential connection to this place, and maybe
I don't think that Summer actually does have a connection. I think it's in RWBY's head. That's why I haven't talked about it.
There's also the possibility that, like, Summer, that's the mission that killed her, that she went in there. Some people think that. I know we thought that maybe she turned into the
I think that she's the Wyvern, so I don't think that she had anything to do with it. So maybe she went there.
We also know that Salem shows up at a certain point in the
I have a theory about that that's separate. But so to recap, portals, maiden, Alyx semblance, and then additionally, Little becomes a door.
Into a door.
Yeah.
Sensible.
So that's it. I hope that you got any thoughts, Hunter? I mean, I like the maiden one the best, just because it's the cleanest one.
It's the cleanest one.
We don't need to, like, and then we kind of get rid of that idea that, like, ascending is the way to get back to Remnant, because I think that's stupid. I think it's stupid. Like, I'll just say it. The reason why I'm so against it is because I think that's ridiculous. I know that there's been a lot of ridiculous stuff this volume, but humans are not supposed to be here, so why does the tree have a built-in mechanism to get people back to Remnant? It doesn't make any fucking sense. But what would make sense if the tree is not the thing, and something else is just the thing instead, right? And that makes more sense to me, right?
I mean, it's a distinct possibility. I really enjoy this volume because it is so off the wall, and so it's doing everything deeply in an unexpected way. It's basically the only volume of RWBY that at its core is a mystery.
Yeah.
That we don't know.
I think that's why I like it so much, because I like mysteries.
But it's also turned your brain into, like, a bizarre conspiracy theory machine, more than it already is.
But I think that makes sense. I like the idea that she was the maiden, and that the tree is not the way home, but and that, like, Alyx was always, and maybe that's why.
But Alyx and the tree and what happened to her and Lewis is, like, the mystery box that we do not know what it contains.
And I just thought of something. What if the reason why Alyx was so angry wasn't because she realized that she would have to kill herself to get her brother home? What if it was because she realized in order to help Team RWBY, she would not be able to return with her brother, right? Maybe the reason why she was so resentful toward Jaune was because she realized that eventually, maybe she realized that she did actually want to go home at some point, but she realized that she couldn't make her brother stay there for his entire life, that she would have to be the one to stay there in order to get Team RWBY out. And that's why she's so resentful and angry at Team RWBY, is because in the time it took for her to wait, right? Like, maybe what she was doing was she was like, fuck these people, I'm getting my brother home, I don't care if they're stuck here, but, like, she had kind of
and that's why Jaune doesn't like her.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean?
Because Jaune wants her to save friends.
But I don't know if Jaune knew that, but that's why Alyx doesn't like Jaune, because, like, she knows that she will have to stay there and be separated with her brother, because if she goes back to Remnant, there's always the risk that she could die and leave them there. And so maybe at first she's like, you know what? Fuck them. Who cares if they're stuck in here? I don't care. But then, like, something at the herbalist or like something changes, and so she sends Lewis back home, and that's why she's so lonely. She has to stay there to save Team RWBY.
Maybe
and
that's what that
she's
Salem
sad.
scene was what the herbalist showed her was what she has to fight against.
Maybe.
And what
that
she has to wait there for.
But
that would
yeah,
be
she has to wait to get Team RWBY out, but in that time she ascends and turns into Juniper.
I love how you cannot give, no matter what happens, no matter what changes.
But that makes a lot of sense to me. She's angry. The reason why she's so angry
I'm
is because...
so angry, I'm gonna turn into a rabbit.
The reason why she's so angry is because she realizes that because Jaune and his friends fucking fell here, she's gonna have to wait 20 years and she can't go home, even though at first she didn't want to go home, but then when she actually wants to go home, she can't. Because she has the obligation to stay there.
But she has an understanding of why she needs to stay because of that.
She understands, she's just mad.
Yes, that's fair.
And so I think that's actually like, I just had that like brain blast. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed our little ideas. I like that theory the best, that she was the maiden and she realized that she had to stay there.
I'm
like
gonna turn into a rabbit.
Like to help them get out, that she couldn't just leave them there or else it would cause problems, basically. So yeah, I like that. But anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys had fun. And we will see you guys in the next one. Bye.